Hi and welcome to the MCA broadcast, your fix for everything innovative in advertising production. I'm Pat Murphy and I've been working in this industry for more than 35 years now. I've seen a lot of changes, but no, there's plenty more around the corner. Each week on the podcast, you'll get to hear from one of the movers and shakers who are shaping the world of advertising for the future. And we'll dive into some of the key challenges facing our sector today and how we're best placed to overcome them. Today we're talking to Melania Kulczycka, co-founder and client services director of VuFinder Studios in Poland. She has supported the execution of projects using virtual production technology for brands such as Beko, Bosch, Beat & Calgon, and many others. Virtual production studio utilizing LED screens, Unreal Engine, tracking systems and 3D environments is her specialization. As a certified aerospace engineer, she's an enthusiast and active promoter of new technologies. Melania, thanks for being here today to talk about a subject I'm very passionate about, which is virtual production.
Hello, Pat. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
Before we dig into the virtual production topic, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your background, because when I found out that you were a certified aerospace engineer, my son is fascinated by planes, by the way. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that was a while ago. I studied aerospace engineering at Warsaw University of Technology in Poland, because my mind is very science-oriented and I'm interested in technology and maths and physics and also problem solving. So Warsaw University of Technology was the straightforward choice for myself. But when I graduated, I decided to pursue my career in the UK. I moved out from Poland and I decided to move to UK, where I started my job as an engineer, and it was related to virtual reality already. So my job was related to designing military missions for the Ministry of Defence in the UK. We were training a very specific position in the army. This position is called JTAC. And before our company, they were training just using their imagination. So they had to imagine that there is a tank on a battlefield, or there's a plane or some enemies. But with virtual reality, we made it more immersive and more real for them. They could see what's happening. They could see their reaction to their actions. So this was the first time when I fell in love with virtual reality.
Fantastic. Did you actually sign the Official Secrets Act? Are we allowed to talk a little bit about some of the things you did there?
Yeah. We are allowed to talk about it, not in details, but in general, yes. But I did have to sign a few contracts.
Okay. Without breaking any confidences, tell us a little bit of some of the cool stuff that you're working on. And what are some of the things that really fascinated you specifically about working for the Ministry of Defence?
I think the best part was that we were doing something that was never really done before. We had to discover completely new solutions, and you couldn't just Google an answer to a question. You just had to use method of trial and errors to test out the solution that you came up with, because there's no one who can advise what solution to use. So there was a lot of problem solving, which I personally love, and I like digging deeper to find the solution to the problem that can help someone doing their job better. And really cool part was designing everything on a computer and then seeing it actually happening and seeing that happening in the training with the army people. And I could see that they really benefited from what we were doing. So that was amazing.
Now, I'm imagining that it was a very male-dominated environment there. I mean, what was it like for you going in as not just a woman, a Polish woman into this environment? What was the reaction?
You know, UK is a very, very open country, so I didn't have too much problems with that. But I was the only foreign person in the company, that's right. But they had another girlfriend, a colleague friend at the company. So yeah, male-dominated definitely. But to be honest, I didn't really mind. I like working with everyone. I don't have problems with talking to people, meeting new people, speaking English, or working in a different country. So it's not a problem. And, you know, the whole university was male-dominated. So 95% of the students were males. But it's not a problem. It's nice to have women around, but I'm open to working with everyone.
At what point for you did you know, right, that's it, I'm going to stop doing that, I'm going to go into the TV world?
That's an interesting story, because my dad, he's involved in producing TV commercials. And he has a company called Autofilm in Poland. So in the meantime, when I was in the UK, I was working with the military. He was doing commercials in Poland. And there was one client that approached him and they wanted to start shooting commercials using virtual production. It was a couple of years ago, so it was just the beginnings of virtual production in Poland. But my dad said, of course, yeah, I'll do it. Even though that I don't know much about it, I'll learn about it and I'll do it. And because we are in a very good relationship with my dad, he obviously told me about the whole story and that this technology is unbelievable. And I told my dad, well, Dad, this is exactly what I'm doing at my work, but I'm doing it for for the UK Army, not for the commercial clients. So the first project for my dad went very well. He was thinking that maybe it's time to establish a new company. So I thought, well, this is something that could combine my abilities, my skills of technical thinking, problem-solving skills with something that my dad loves. And he told me a lot about commercials and a lot about films. So I love it as well. So I thought that this is a perfect combination between these two industries. And I thought that they would never collide, but they actually do with virtual production. So I decided to help my dad with establishing this company. And to be honest, I took it over a bit. So it was more like it was me doing the things and my dad helping me with everything. So that's how it all started with VuFinder. We established the company last year, June 2022. And since then, we are shooting commercials using virtual production, and it's going really fast. And we are shooting a lot since then.
So it's a family affair.
Yes.
But let's rewind a bit. And just for the benefit of people who don't understand what virtual production is, what's the difference between virtual production or using green screen or back projection, which is obviously, the thing that started out back in the 20s? What is the difference between virtual production and these other methodologies in production?
The whole concept is exactly the same. Virtual production is quite similar to back projection, which was, as you mentioned, it was known since ages. With back projection, there was a projector behind the actors and an image displayed on the projector. It was usually used for shooting car chasing scenes. But the audience could see the difference in the quality of the image. So the physical props and the actors had a different quality than the image displayed on the projector. So it was definitely not an ideal solution. But compared to virtual production, which is, the concept is again quite similar, but instead of a projector, you have a large LED wall behind the actors and the physical props. And the large LED wall, it's really big. It's like 24 meters long and almost 6 meters tall in our case, in our studio. And this LED wall displays interactive images. And it's not just a video, it's not a 2D image, but it's a 3D model. So it's a 3D environment that we display. So it's like in a video game. We actually use the same game engine. We use the same software to create the environments as they use at the game engine industry. And so that's the main difference between the real projection and the virtual production. And compared to green screen is just a green cloth behind the actors. So the actors cannot see the surrounding. The image needs to be added in post, which again creates problems with keying the green spill and adding the images, matching the position of the camera, matching the lighting. It creates a lot of problems. But with virtual production, you can see the image behind the actors in real time. So it's happening on set.
I'm guessing you get a much more natural performance from the talent as well, when they can actually see the environment that they're supposed to be performing in, unlike in green screen.
Absolutely, yeah, because they can see the surroundings. They don't have to imagine everything. They can just literally see it, and they can see the lights because the LED wall emits light itself, so they can see it on themselves. That gives a very natural effect.
What's the difference from a process point of view, right? So if you're an ad agency or a production house, what's the big difference to be thinking about when planning a project like this using virtual production?
So with virtual production, the whole emphasis is on pre-production rather than post-production as using green screen. So we try to compare virtual production to building like a big construction on set. You need to plan and organize everything beforehand. So the pre-production phase is longer, but then the post-production phase is much shorter because usually if you have an editor on set, then you have almost a finished commercial after the shooting day. So that's the main difference.
Do you have to do any post-production at all, or can you just kind of end it after the shoot day, it's done, and you just do the edit?
Almost. Of course, we need to add some colors, make some changes. It depends on the project, because if you want to add some things that are not achievable in virtual production, then the post-production is required. But if it's a simple commercial where the virtual background is only in the background, the virtual environment is only in the background, then the post-production phase is very short. It may be a week in some cases. And if it's a simple project, like if we're doing case studies for our internal purposes, we do it within 1 day.
And from a client perspective, I guess, they can actually see in pre-pro the exact things that they're going to have in the shoot, right, in the environment, which they can choose to the finite degree, I guess.
Yes, exactly. They can see the perfect frame, this exact frame before the shoot, not during the shoot. So if you shoot on locations, then the client obviously will see the location beforehand, but they would not see the exact camera frame beforehand. But with virtual production, we can set the camera whenever the client needs. We can choose the perfect angle. Of course, we can modify all of the objects in the virtual environment as we need.
Now, we know that virtual production has a lot of immediate benefits for a client. One being an incredible way to reduce a carbon footprint, right? Because you're not having to go out on locations and you can kind of control the environments. You don't have everybody traveling on airplanes and hotels and that kind of stuff. So that's one big benefit. So it fits with a sustainable agenda. Then there's obviously the cost benefits if you start to put a lot of ads together. And then the third one, which is a big question mark, right? And I get this question from all the agencies we talk to, is, well, how much am I going to be restricted from my creative? Am I going to be able to do great creative work in a virtual production studio? How much flexibility can I have?
So one of the benefits of virtual production is that you have absolute freedom of creativity using VP, because you're not limited by, for example, laws of physics. You can create any environment that you can think of. If you want to have a castle made of foam, for example, we can do it no problem, because everything is virtual. You're not limited by any restrictions or permissions that you need to obtain. Maybe closing streets of New York, it's quite problematic, expensive, or sometimes even impossible to do. But with virtual production, we can recreate the streets from scratch, or we can scan the streets and then transfer them into Unreal Engine. So with virtual production, you are limited only by your imagination.
How authentic does that look when you're working in virtual production? I always hear, well, it's not going to look as good as if I went on a location.
Sometimes we show a video to our clients and we pause the video and ask them which of the elements are virtual and which of them are physical. And it's not an easy question. If you weren't on a set, sometimes it's really difficult to say which of the elements are physical and which of them are virtual, because the technology is evolving so quickly that now it's a photorealistic effect. If you want to achieve that, that's not a problem. If you have enough time, it's not a problem to achieve that.
This year, we were really happy to have you come to one of our panels in Cannes at the LBB pitch that we sponsored. We heard you talk about generative AI and virtual production together. I'm guessing that the combination of the two is explosive. How are you currently using those two technologies combined?
We try to use AI as much as we can, because I guess there is no other option. We just have to adjust to the current trends, and we want to use it because it's such a great tool that helps us optimize our work and help us deliver the projects quickly. There are minor things that when AI helps us with our projects, like, for example, Midjourney or DALL-E, the tools that are quite popular, and we use them to either show the ideas to the client, to be on the same page with the client, or maybe director or DOP, show different types of lighting on the set. That's how we can use such tools. Or we sometimes use these programs to generate images that will then appear in our virtual scene. So, for example, paintings on the wall in the virtual scene. We usually use Midjourney or DALL-E to do it. That's a very simple thing to do with AI. There's so much more. We use AI, of course, to optimize our environments, because the environment is actually a 3D model. And if you put a lot of details, then the model is quite heavy. It requires a lot of computational power. But using AI, we can make it more optimized. So in simple words, a lighter version of the model. So it's easier to display it on such a large LED wall. I will not go into too much technical details because it will probably bore everyone.
No, I don't think so.
But there's one cool thing that AI helps us with, which is the meta-humans, the virtual humans that we can create. This technology allows us to scan any person that we want and then transfer this person to Unreal Engine, and then this person becomes a virtual human. So we can use this person as an extra on the set, or we can multiply this person so we can have the same person in one commercial, or we can scan actors and then they can just display as extras on the virtual background.
That's a bit spooky because that's partly why I guess the actors are striking in Hollywood, right? Because the whole AI thing means that they may be out of a job in years to come. What's your view on that as far as ethics is concerned?
I don't think AI will take their jobs because, natural acting will never be replaced by AI. It's not there yet. And we wouldn't have meta-humans, virtual humans as main actors, as main roles, because you can still see that this is an image generated by a computer. That's not a real person. So they only appear as extras. I think it only helps us with optimizing the work on the set. And we still need real actors and really good actors, at least to scan them and put them in the virtual environment, but also to appear on set as well, because that gives the final natural effect that we all want to achieve.
So VuFinder is part of the Otto Group. And clearly, a lot of the technicians you've used have been used to a different way of working. Do you have to upskill the technicians to work in virtual production in a different way?
Some of them, I would say actually most of them, picked up virtual production very quickly, because even though that might sound a bit complicated, it's actually not. It's not rocket science. As soon as you go into a set and shoot the first commercial, you already know how it works. You know the benefits, you know the limitations of the technology. So it's not something that you should be afraid of, because the learning process is quite quick, especially if you don't want to go into a lot of details. I would say the group that adjusted very quickly to virtual production are the DOPs, because with virtual production, we also have a virtual pre-light, which is the DOPs. They need to set up the lighting in the virtual scene. And the cool part is that you can choose the lights exactly the same as in physical world. So if a DOP has a perfect sky panel that they want to use, they can use exactly the same sky panel in the virtual environment. Or maybe they can use two suns if they want to light the scene. That's achievable as well. So most of the groups adjusted to virtual production very quickly.
I'm guessing from a director of photography perspective, it's much more controllable in a virtual production studio. And of course, you don't have the issues around weather. If you're on location, you're in a studio, but you can control the lighting and decide how long you want to shoot, say, the magic hour all day long if you want.
Exactly. You don't have to wait the whole day for the magic hour, or you don't have to wait for the rain, or you don't have to wait for the sun. You can just have it straight away in our studio. You can shoot summer commercials during winter and winter commercials during summer, because we can create everything on our LED wall. And, it's much nicer to be in a studio, nice, warm and cozy studio, rather than being outside when it's really cold or rainy. And, shooting on locations requires sometimes waiting a lot of time for the sun to show up, or for the rain to stop, or the snow to stop.
You're going to spoil these creatives, right? Who love going on those locations. And they won't be able to do that anymore if you carry on doing this. It's a different way of operating, I know. But it means that, a lot of this travel is a thing of the past as this technology progresses, I guess.
I know I hear a lot of that from our clients and the agencies, that okay, so that's it. We cannot travel to South Africa anymore. But yeah, unfortunately, that is true. With climate changing, it's something that we should all be aware of, that we should actually limit our traveling. And COVID showed us that we can do everything remotely. So sometimes you don't even need to fly to a shoot with BP. You can just be in your own country. So yeah, I believe it should all change, or at least we should limit the travel, because we need to save the planet.
From a carbon footprint perspective, do you have much data to prove what the carbon footprint reduction actually is yet?
Yes, we try to collect data as much as we can, just to compare actually the traditional production with the virtual production. And we did a case, we actually calculated a case based on our previous commercial that we shot beginning of last year. We calculated the carbon footprint that was emitted during the whole process of producing the commercial. And then we did a simulation. So we calculated the same carbon footprint if this commercial were shot using traditional production. And it turned out that it would be about 5 times more carbon footprint to use traditional production than virtual production. So of course, the main component is the travel. With virtual production, you don't need to transport. You can just stay in one studio. But with this commercial, it was, I think, about 6 different or 7 different locations. So traveling to different locations just requires a lot of cars, a lot of company moves. Also accommodation, because we could limit the number of shooting days. We can shoot up to 6 different locations in one shooting day with virtual production. But with traditional production, it's quite difficult to get completely different locations within one day. So yes, we estimate that it's usually about 5 times more eco-friendly virtual production than traditional production.
That's a 75% reduction in carbon footprint by working in virtual production studio. That's enormous. I mean, every single client should be thinking about this if they are serious about their sustainability plan, right? It's that simple, don't you think?
Absolutely, yeah. And, there is a new law coming up in 2024 that all of the big companies will need to report their carbon footprint, and they cannot exceed the limits. So virtual production will be helping with that.
Fantastic. Now, we're seeing technology evolve so fast, Melania. It's hard to keep up, right? What do you think the next couple of years are going to be like in terms of change of technology? Can you see kind of around the corner what's going to change? And what do you hope will happen?
It's quite difficult to predict because, as you mentioned, the technology is changing so quickly. And, Epic Games, they release a new version of Unreal Engine every 2-3 months. And the changes are just incredible. So it's really difficult to say for sure what will happen in the future. But I think that the virtual production will allow for even more photorealistic effects. For example, Epic Games, they announced new dynamic lighting with a new version of Unreal Engine, which is a massive change for our scenes because we can make them photorealistic and we don't need to bake the lights into the scene, but the light can be changing interactively. So things like that, and it's just one example, right? But with MetaHumans, that's another big step, and I'm really interested to see what the future holds for us. I think for sure the scenes will be more realistic, and we'll probably start to explore more extended reality using virtual production, because currently the LED wall is located behind the actors and behind the physical construction, set construction. But with extended reality, we would be able to put images before or in front of the talents and in front of the set construction, which is currently done in post-production. So if you imagine, a butterfly sitting on someone's shoulder, that would be normally added in post-production because it's quite difficult to train butterflies in reality. But with extended reality, it would be possible to do on set.
So big plug for the production industry in Poland. Why should someone come and work with you guys in Poland instead of working somewhere else?
Well, I think the most important thing for us is quality. We try to make our commercials as photorealistic as we can, and we try to fulfill the requirements of the client. That's one thing, but I know that everyone is offering the same thing. So, of course, compared to Western countries, Poland is still a more cost-effective solution than the Western countries, which is probably the most important or one of the very important factors when considering a location for production. So I would say we have the same quality as Western countries, as studios in US, UK, Germany, but we are about 30, sometimes 50% more cost-friendly.
That's a pretty compelling argument, I'd say. Apart from the fact you're all really nice people there. So that's great. Now, I read an article at the beginning of the year that your father, Jacek, CEO of Autofilm, he said he hopes you will become the successor of the business. Is that still the plan?
That is still the plan. I'm in Poland since last year, so I'm still learning about the whole industry, but I'm learning very fast. I love learning, and I think I'm quite good at it. I have great support from my dad, Jacek. I have great mentors at VuFinder, great mentors in the whole Auto group. So yeah, that is definitely the plan. And as soon as I'm ready and my dad is ready, then we'll probably proceed with that. But it's a long process and it's a learning process, and I have to be fully prepared for this role.
Of course. Now, look, before I let you go, finally, the question we have to ask all of our guests, since it's become a highlight of our podcast. Melania, what's your favorite ad of all time?
Yeah, that's a very good but very difficult question, I must say, because there are so many good commercials, and it was quite difficult to pick just one of my favorites. But the one I would like to mention is the Sony Bravia commercial with the bouncing balls.
I know it very well. I think it was an ad made by Fallon many years ago. That's quite a long time ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
But great ad. Love it.
The creative idea was to throw 250,000 bouncing balls of a steep street of San Francisco and then just capture everything. And the bouncing balls were of different colors, so the final effect looks just stunning. You can see the cat looking at the bouncing balls. You can see the frog jumping with the bouncing balls. And if you watch the making of, you can hear the sound of the bouncing balls going on the street. And you can see the alarms of the cars because of the noise. That was unbelievable. I wonder how long it took them to clean all of the balls.
It's still an ad that stands the test of time, doesn't it? I think.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. But I think it would be possible to even shoot it in Unreal Engine now. Why not?
There you go. Another plug. Well done. And we're going to post that ad up as well on the podcast.com website so everybody can take a look at your favorite ad. So, Melania, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much, Pat.
Today we talked to Melania Kulczycka, co-founder and client services director of VuFinder Studios, and we had the opportunity to explore a little bit more about virtual production. Find out more about the MCA podcast, please head to thepodcast.com where you'll find details on all my guests, links to their favorite ads and full transcription of all the episodes. If you'd like to feature on the podcast or have any comments, questions or feedback, please email us at podcast@murphycog.com. I'm Pat Murphy, CEO of MCA. Do come and connect with us on LinkedIn or Instagram, of which all the links in the notes for this episode will be there. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks again to Melania, my team at MCA, and to my production team at What Goes On Media. Thanks for listening. See you next time.